Okay, today we're going to be looking at colour, and we're going to be using watercolour in particular and doing a transparency experiment, as you can see here. The first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to grid our paper, give ourselves the working area to produce this page. You're going to need a ruler and a pencil, and I'm going to ask you to just basically use the thickness of the ruler at the edge of your sketchbook page and to just mark off every 3 centimeters, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, and you should make it down to 27. While you've got the ruler there, just divide your page off like so. Next, you're going to need to go to the halfway point of the paper. Okay, I've done this by eye. If you feel the need to measure it, you can, but I can see that that's about right. And I'm going to mark this off again. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27. The reason for this is now when I turn my ruler this way, I will be able to line up the 2 dashes that I've made, and this will ensure that I get straight lines. I'm also going to just mark this area as well, not all the way down, just down 1, 2, 3, 4 of the lines there, just to block off this area. I'm going to come across the top and I'm going to do the same thing here now. So I need to mark every 3 centimeters. Okay, so 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. I've started from this line here. Okay, and I'm going to move the ruler down and do the same. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Okay, that will give me 2 dashes I need to create the top section of my page. In a minute we're going to write water and then colour, study here, and we're going to have some different techniques that we do on this section here, and then we're going to describe it in this section. Okay, and you can see that here. Now we're going to have to break these sections down again, so we're going to divide them in half. Okay, so here we've got 3 centimeter sections. We're going to divide them in half. Obviously that's going to be 1.5 centimeters. Okay, so I put my ruler here, I take my 3 centimeters, I look for 1.5 in the middle of each of these sections, and I do the same over here. I have my 2 dashes, so now I can join these sections up. And my page is good to go. Here's the grid work for the colour work. Okay, to do these techniques we're going to need a variety of materials. We're going to need some oil pastels. You're only going to need 1 each. We're going to need some water and a couple of different size brushes. You're going to need your watercolour. You're going to need your cling film, paper towel, pencil and a rubber, and a dry brush for the dry brush technique. We're going to start at the top section here for the techniques. We're going to start with a dry brush and then move on to wet on wet using cling film wax resist, gradient, and a colour lift. We're going to start with a dry brush technique. Using your dry brush, we're going to take a section of our colour. I'm going to pick this brown colour here, and I did dampen the brush, but it's not wet, okay? And it's going to give me a sort of dry brush technique. And there you can see it's not blocked in colour. There's bits of the paper showing through, and I can feel that the paper underneath, I can feel that it's dry, and that is a perfectly valuable technique, and it's a dry brush technique. Okay, I'm going to put that to one side. I'm going to take one of my wetter brushes. This brush is actually wet for the watercolour, and now I'm going to use a wet on wet technique. So I'm going to use a bit of water on the section. I'm going to pick a colour. This time I'm going to pick blue, and I'm just going to run, and we can see the pigment of colour working its way into the paper. Okay, we can even see a pool of water there because it's so wet. Completely different technique to the previous one. I'm going to stick with the blue for a minute, and I'm going to fill this. We can see now I've added more blue, that the tone or value has got darker. It's a nice rich colour there now, and I'm going to use the cling film to take away some of that paint. We can see there creating a texture or a pattern. Wax resist, I'm going to use a wax crayon to put a sort of pattern on this section. And I'm going to go with a contrasting colour. I'm going to pick orange and just run it over the top. And because the water is going to be resistant to the wax, we're going to see the dots shine through. Finally, the standard technique of using watercolours is a gradient. I'm going to keep this orange colour, and I'm going to go really dark at the top, and then sort of come down. I'm going to add a bit of water, take some of the paint off my brush now, and we can see I start to get a lighter tone as I move down the page. I kind of want to break that tone a little bit, so I'm just going to go over the top of that again. Completely clean my brush now. And when I come back here, there's almost no pigment left. I get a nice gradient. I'm going to use green for my final section, and I'm going to just move over here and do it under the colour section. I need quite a lot of water on the brush as well, so it's watercolour technique. Try and keep it fairly wet to begin with, fairly even tone as well. I'm going to use a paper towel to remove and lift some of that pigment. And again, I get a texture here. So this is the beginning of our experimentation. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the labels for the different techniques that I've used, and I'm going to have a little definition for them as well, and you can see that just here. Dry brush, wet on wet, cling film, wax resist, gradient, and colour lift. Okay, so now we should have our page looking something like this. I've put the title in, I've put my techniques in. I'm going to complete my definitions in a minute. First of all, I want to get to the transparency experiment, okay? And the transparency experiment is going to take place down here. We need to paint a line of each colour except black horizontally and then let it dry. So we're going to paint across horizontally each line of colour except black, okay? So here's our watercolours here. We're not going to start with black, so we're going to come down and start with I don't think I'll start with the dark brown here. I'm going to start with the light brown, and we're going to just work across from here. It's watercolour, so I'm going to just add a little bit of water to my brush there because it felt. I don't have to completely fill the line, but I'm going to try and stay in the tracks, so to speak, okay? Okay, because we're using watercolour, this has dried to the touch really quickly. I've only left it about 3 minutes. So now we're going to do exactly the same, but we're going to paint our lines vertically down across the horizontal lines. And we should get something that's going to look a little bit like this. We're going to see some colour change, pigment change as this happens. And here we have our finished watercolour page. I just need to make sure that I put my definitions just in here. And that's it.